Hello everyone, welcome back to Scare-A-Thon 2024, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project, and this is our fourth Box Set Thursday. We're going to be talking about the Hatchet movies. There's a new steelbook release from DarkSky, and let's bring in my good friends Ryan Olson and Jennifer Olson, and we're going to be chatting about all four of the Hatchet movies, 2007, 2010, 2013, and Victor Crowley from 2017. Thank you for coming to my rescue, because we lost the person that was actually going to chat about these with before. And I was like, you know what? Ryan and Jen, that's even better. So thank you.
Two for
thank
one.
you. So did you come aware of Hatchet through Adam Green, like coming to one of the conventions? How did it come on your radar?
Yeah, it was conventions, talking to different people. It just word of mouth, basically. That's how I learned about it.
Adam was at I forget what convention it was. Might have been a Flashback.
I was either Flashback or Fangoria.
Yeah, it was one of those. He was at one of those conventions and promoting the movie, and that's how I heard about it. I also remember, it being, I believe, on the cover of a Fangoria as well, and it played in Gurnee. And, my buddy Dave and I road trip down to go see it. And that's where we started. And then I followed it ever since, actually catching all of them in the theater except for 3.
And 3, because it didn't play near you.
I don't think it played. Yeah, if it played, it didn't really get much.
I wasn't aware of it getting out there, but I also will admit that I wasn't as high on the franchise after 2. I was kind of like, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So I only just recently saw 3 and Victor Crowley when this box set came out. So they are newly in my brain.
Well, it's funny because Dave and I went and saw part 2. It actually played in our city opening night unrated. And it was like us and maybe 1 or 2 other people in the theater, and it ended up not even making it through the weekend, and they pulled it. It was such a unfortunate disaster, because I do enjoy 2 myself. I like all 4 movies, but it was a bummer that nobody really supported it, sadly.
Yeah. Well, and if we talk about, let's go back to the first one, just because we'll talk our way through the set. So yes, similar to you at whatever Flashback or Fangoria it was, but that was where it kind of came on my radar for the first time. And Adam Green's enthusiasm for this movie, I remember that was the thing. Like, they gave him a slot so that he could talk on stage. And, by the end of the movie, I think, or by the end of his presentation, everybody was just like, oh yeah, we got to see this movie. Yeah. And they showed some of the unrated clips. Yeah. And there was one where the guy's head gets twisted off. And all of us just kind of lost our minds and went, yes, we had just started leaning into bringing gore back with Saw and Hostel, etc.
Well, it was also touted as old school American horror. Right. Was another. I believe that's even on the original
on the
DVD.
Poster. Yeah.
It said that on there too, about how, practical effects and the splatter and trying to
bring in the slasher back.
Yeah, basically. Because really at that point, aside from screams and stuff, which were largely very, sanitized to a degree. Scream had some extreme elements, but this was kind of like, we're going to bring back the 3 Bs and we're going to do it with gusto. And that was kind of exactly what we got. And of course, Kane playing the titular character, getting, what he said is one of his favorite roles.
Yeah.
He had a lot of fun on that role.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that, Scream had kind of played itself out by this point. Like, there was that resurgence of the slashers, following the release of Scream. But by, as we crossed over the 2000s mark, it was like, like they started ebbing back down again. We started getting all the J-horror and the J-horror remakes. So
and again, the Scream franchise and a lot of the other ones that came in its wake, like your urban legends and things like that, which are entertaining for what they are. They were kind of lacking some of the more lurid and extreme elements of what was, the heyday for the slasher craze, and what, all of us gore hounds loved back in the day was that stuff. You had some gore, but it was definitely not on the level of like what Hatchet would bring.
Right, right. And we also got, and I think Adam Green definitely got this right. Adam Green, the writer, director, and creator of the franchise, he wanted to give us a new kind of anti-hero. He wanted to give us a new Jason, a new Freddy. And so there was this mythology that he whipped up about, the story of Victor Crowley and how he came to be. And he kind of became this kind of instant boogeyman that felt like, oh yeah, we remember Victor Crowley, even though he was a new character.
I think he did a great job with crafting that, because a lot of other people have tried. And, I mean, yes, you got Ghostface, which would be one, but I mean, Candyman. I mean, who else can you really...
Right, between those two.
Until you get to Victor Crowley, as far as that. I mean, I know some people would bring up Leslie Vernon, but to me, that was a giant, massively failed experiment, for my opinion, even though it's funny because he is... I believe they comment, or there is a comment thrown in one of the movies about him. So, but I mean, I know that when that came out, everybody's like, oh, it's going to be the next one. And it was just like, no.
Well, that one was so meta. I feel like we never truly invested in the idea of Leslie Vernon in the way that we invested in Victor Crowley, and John Carl Buechler being on board to create the effects. Somebody who had grown up in the heyday of the Charles Band films, like he's a legend. And so, for Adam Green to get Kane, to get John Carl Buechler, to get cameos from Tony Todd and Robert Englund. Tell us the story of Victor Crowley. Jen, can you do that for us?
The story of Victor Crowley.
How did he come to be?
So there was this man. What was the father's name? Mr. Crowley. I'll just say Mr. Crowley. How's that?
Mr. Crowley.
I forget the father's name. Mr. Crowley.
Cue the Ozzy song.
Yes, cue Ozzy. He and his wife was sick, and he ended up having an affair with the nurse. Well, the nurse ended up pregnant, and the wife found out and put a voodoo curse on them. So Victor Crowley was born very mutated and cursed. So he hid out in the swamps of New Orleans. And what was it? The
Honey
Creek swamps, I believe it was.
Wow, you're getting so much detail. I'm so impressed. Keep it up.
Right? He hid in the swamps to save his boy from all of the kids making fun of him. Well, the kids always tormented him, and one Halloween night, they threw firecrackers at the cabin that they lived in so they can scare him out to see him. Well, they ended up catching the cabin on fire, and as the father took a hatchet to try to bust down the door to get poor Victor out, he ended up lopping him in the head because he was right on the other side of the door and killing him.
And then Victor Crowley's ghost returns, haunting the swamp.
After his father passed away from a broken heart, which killed me seeing poor Kane crying like that.
Nice. Good job. Thank you. Well done. Well done. And actually, I think you introduced, I again, having just watched them all recently, they kind of blur together, but I think some of that, the affair with the nurse, I think that gets introduced in Hatchet II.
They go more into the story in 2.
Right. Because in the first one, we kind of just get the basic setup of he was born deformed and how he chopped through the door and killed his son. And then I think 2, we realized that there was a curse involved and there was some voodoo magic going on, which is probably why Victor's able to come back. Getting Kane, and I think that was another part of the allure, was that Adam Green was going to have him play the father, Victor Crowley, so he could do a character out of makeup as well as doing the makeup work. Because for those who don't know, Kane Hodder's kind of legendary for doing makeup, characters in makeup, most notably Jason Voorhees from 7 to 10. Is that right?
7 to 10.
He wasn't in 6, right?
Graham was
okay.
6.
Thank you.
Right.
It was Adam Green's. This script had gotten him into a lot of meetings, but it had been rejected by pretty much everybody in town. No studio wanted to produce it. And so they ended up producing it independently. And then Adam Green took to the road and basically like hit all the conventions and whipped up a lot of attention on the internet. Got the support of Ryan Turek at Shock Till You Drop and Blade Disgusting, Brad Miska. And suddenly Hatchet was a thing. And I will say it delivered the goods. Like it wasn't just a lot of hype.
No,
it was real fun. I loved it.
And I think part of that's because it is written as a comedy and a
Yeah, you
horror.
get your comedy elements. I mean, even though it's extreme gore killings of heads getting ripped off and that, it's still funny at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All of
But
the
it
characters
works,
have
though.
some really entertaining byplay in terms of the
Yeah.
dialogue. I think the dialogue's really sharp.
Yeah. Well, I think the characters are kind of what helps elevate the movie is even though they are there just to be cannon fodder largely, there's still a lot of them are very fleshed out. Even the ones that are not in it as much have enough of a personality and a thing where you actually are like, you recognize them as people and you not necessarily that you care about them so much and don't want them to die, but you at least kind of they stick in your mind. You remember, I mean, like the dudes that the perv that's shooting all the stuff and the two girls, the banner between those two in that first movie. I mean, so much great
Bayou
one-liners.
Beavers.
I mean, oh
yes.
my God. It's just, there is some really great, hilarious banter going back and forth between those two.
And I think, Avatar fans will be surprised to go back and look and see Joel David Moore as our lead character because this was kind of pre-stardom for him.
Well, he was also in Grandma's Boy that year, which was, I mean, the first movie where he the first movie I remember seeing him in was Hatchet, but then Grandma's Boy came out too. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen that, but
I have not.
He has if you for a comedy, cannot recommend it highly enough. And his character in it is super memorable and hilarious. And I mean, that's a very, very like loved and quoted comedy. I know we're talking about horror, but
I'll make in the notes. I'll record it.
His performance in there. I mean, the whole movie is great, but he has a very standout performance in that particular character as well. So between those two, they really kind of put him on the map right away.
Well, and I'll throw out another recommendation that was also co-directed by Adam Green, Spiral, which is a great thriller with Joel David Moore, who was co-directing with Adam Green because he was playing the lead character. But that's a great kind of psychological study of a guy losing his mind. Well, worth seeing. So now we got Spiral, we got Grandma's Boy, and back to Hatchet. Who's our character that
Mary Beth.
Yeah,
Mary Beth. Okay. And it's played by not Danielle Harris. Tamara Feldman plays Mary Beth, who her father is played by Robert Englund, right? Out there night fishing, and her brother played by Joshua Leonard of Blair Witch Project. But anyway, so we have a lot of horror luminaries, and it's a funny, engaging, gory, splattery, enjoyable experience. I think it delivers everything that it promises.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Agreed.
And because Adam Green is a huge fan, we had 2 commentary tracks on the DVD. We had tons of behind the scenes footage. We had featurettes, we had interviews. So it's a really great disc as well in terms of the movie's great. And then you also get to, if you're a fan of the movie, you get a lot of extras to go along with it.
I still have the Anchor Bay 2 disc. I think it's either 1 or 2 disc set that came out. And it was the one that I got at Best Buy that had the Hatchet keychain thing inside there, which I still have the box and all that stuff. I haven't upgraded to Blu-ray yet, but definitely need to do that at some point.
And then if we look at Hatchet 2, and you said you saw that one in the theater as well.
Yes. Dave and I went and saw it opening weekend. Again, it played in our city. And sadly, though, it was Dave and I and I want to say maybe 2 other people tops in the theater. I mean, it was like we were shocked because we were so stoked and thought, man, there had to be an audience, but nobody showed up. I mean, again, the movie didn't even make it through the weekend. It got pulled from theaters because it did that bad, which is unfortunate to me. I mean, it could be argued it might be the weakest one of the bunch, but I mean, to me, it's like I still thought it was a very good follow-up in the sequel. And, it's still delivered on everything you'd want. And just like the first film, it's just more is more. I mean, you get a little bit more, it's a little bit maybe fat on some of the action stuff going on, but still.
There's more talking in it.
Yeah, but still, to me, I don't know. To me, I still was engaged and I was into it, maybe because I was a fan of it. So
I was not put off by the focus on character and, the non-gore scenes, the non-horror scenes. But Tony Todd is given a much bigger role this time around.
Reverend Zombie.
Reverend Zombie.
There we go. He's given a much bigger role and a much bigger backstory. Our actor Perry Shen comes back as the brother of his own, as his own brother who gets killed in the first one.
Yes.
And Perry Shen is somebody who I think, other than Kane, is the only one who's appeared in all 4 movies.
Every movie.
He's been in all 4, yes. And it's brilliant how they've written him in to keep him involved. I mean, to me, I love it. And he's great. He really is a unsung kind of star of these movies.
We learn, as you kind of, when we were talking about the backstory of Victor Crowley, we learn more about everybody in this film. We learn that Robert Englund was actually one of the boys who had thrown a firecracker. And so there's a curse on Mary Beth's family. Yeah. Reverend Zombie was deeply involved as well. And we learn all his backstory. And Reverend Zombie, basically, he rounds up, we kind of didn't really talk about this, but in the first Hatchet, it's a bunch of, party people who are there for Mardi Gras, and they decide to go on a ghost tour of the swamps. And that's how they end up in the swamps where Victor Crowley is. In part 2, Reverend Zombie is basically leading a pack of hunters to go track down Victor Crowley.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how Mary Beth gets back into the mix. And Mary Beth, as you alluded, is played this time by Danielle Harris.
Well, she did an awesome job, I thought.
Yeah.
She's let's talk about Danielle. Let's get some love on Danielle Harris.
Growing up watching Halloween, she was the same age as me. I've always been a fan of her.
Yeah, and she's a sweetheart too when you get to meet her. Because I mean, there was a period around the Hatchet movies where she was everywhere at all the conventions for several years. So I mean, I've had a lot of interactions with her, and she was always super cool and sweet and just excited to be there. And you can tell she loves what she does, and she's really into it, and she fully embraces all that stuff, which I think is great as well. And I mean, she's a damn fine actor. She really knocks it out of the park, and took that role to another level that, all due respect to Tamara, she did a solid job. But I mean, Daniel was clearly an upgrade. It's great to see what she's done with it.
If you're a convention goer, you get to meet all these people, and a lot of those people show up in the Hatchet movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like a little mini Hatchet convention reunion, because we get Danielle Harris, who apparently had auditioned for the original Hatchet, and Adam Green had cast Tamara instead.
Wow.
And one of her conditions on coming to do Hatchet 2 was like, you have to say that you were wrong. And he's like, okay, fine. I should have picked you in the first place. But she is a beloved person at the conventions, as is Tony Todd, as is Kane Hodder, as is Derek Mears, as is Caroline Williams. So it's like we're kind of like Tom Holland is somebody who's in that.
John Carl Beekler, thankfully, R.I.P. I've been lucky enough to meet him.
And I think that's kind of the fun of seeing these. And it's what I would love to see conventions be, is it's an opportunity for these actors to continue to get exposed and connected with their audience. And their audience is people like who are filmmakers, people like Adam Green, who are like, you know what, I would love to have you in my movie. Would you be willing to? Can I give you the script, etc.? Like it's an opportunity to have a face-to-face connection with these people.
Yeah. Yes. And again, you got to give Adam credit, because he is a hell of a talented filmmaker. I mean, Frozen, not to get off Hatchet too much, but Frozen, it's a masterpiece of a movie. It's an opposite end of Hatchet in terms of extreme, but it's extreme in the suspense sense and that, but it's an amazing film. And I mean, he really, really did a great job with that. But I mean, with Hatchet, with respect to it, to me, I look at the Hatchet series as what I like to call meat and potatoes horror. This delivers on what you want. It may not be the highest end stuff or the lowest end, but it just hits you right where you need to. When you have a nice, good steak and potatoes, that's what Hatchet does. It delivers on the goods,
I'm gonna go and say I think it's the corn dog and French fries of horror. like this isn't good for you, but damn, it tastes good.
It does.
Sure. Okay. Like that good greasy burger that you get.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't know if it's steak, but it's probably the best burger you're gonna get.
Burger, is that what it is? Yeah.
Sure.
The messy ones. Those are the best ones. Yeah.
And then speaking of Adam Green, he passed the directorial reins off for Hatchet 3. And BJ McDonald was the Steadicam operator for, I think, the first couple movies. You said that you thought Hatchet 2 was the low point of the series?
I did.
For me personally, I think, revisiting it now, it could kind of, I'm not sure, because I originally I always felt that 3 was, because I only seen it the one time. I bought it when it came out and I watched it right away, and I did enjoy it, but it definitely seemed like a step down to me from the 2 previous films. But watching it this week when we went through these movies to refresh our minds, I really found it to be a lot more fun this time around, because you do get some exposition, but the majority of the film is just kill after kill after kill. It's a literal wall-to-wall gore fest of just slaughter. The body count is just off the charts. It's redonkulous in terms of that. And, it's like, holy cow.
I want to know the real body count. But
Yeah.
do you count the previous people that are still there?
That's right. From the night before. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it just keeps adding from all 3 movies. And the third one, you still got all those people there. They're going to retrieve them. But now you got all these other people coming.
Yeah.
Well, and they do expand the universe again. Caroline Williams plays this reporter who wants to show that Victor Crowley is real. Danielle Harris comes back. We have a SWAT team that is being brought in to take out Victor Crowley. So it's like, everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger, even though it's still a small little movie.
And we got to remember that Perry Shen is back as a completely different character. That although they do find the DNA of his DNA on 2 other bodies that they find there.
Yeah.
But he's a completely different character, being one of the medical people that are sent in with the horde of first responders and all that stuff to go pick up the remains of the first 2 slaughter fests, only to end up joining the ever-growing body count, which again in this movie, it's like once it gets going, there's very little room to breathe. It's literally right up to the very last shot.
Well, and when you think about just now watching all the behind the scenes things that are in this new box set, the fact that a lot of it is shot on sets is something that it never even occurred to me, because it feels so authentic.
In the swamps, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like you're in Louisiana, and instead you are in California. You're on a soundstage, and they do talk about how because there was all the water and the moisture, like things started growing in the studio. So there's just like mold and mildew and things like that, like, things growing on the sides of the walls and down the hallways. And it's like, could you guys get out of here? You're killing us.
Right.
Now, I'm curious, you said you have the original releases. Do those have the same kind of extras, commentaries, and behind the scenes?
I believe so. There's a good amount there. They've always featured a good amount of special features on there.
Yeah, I always feel like Adam Green's because he's a fan first. Yeah. He's very generous with showing how things were done.
Oh yeah, we watched one of the featurette things. I think it was called Raising Cain, where it's Cain getting his makeup put on.
Yeah,
he's just in the trailer getting.
I think that's on the third disc.
That's on the third one. That's right, because they talk about how the makeup changed.
Yeah, he's got all the masks sitting there from.
Yeah. What did you think of part 3, Aaron?
I was once again surprised. It's one of those things where you're like, that burger's okay. And then you have it and you're like, that burger's actually pretty good. I enjoyed it more than I expected to. And this was, again, the first time I was seeing it. So I was pleasantly surprised. I don't think you get anything more than you expected, but you absolutely get what you ordered. It's almost inevitable this had to be a franchise, because that's the kind of things that, as old school American horror, it's all about the franchises. It's about going bigger with the sequels. It's about having a bigger body count. It's about expanding the mythology. So the idea that Hatchet was ever going to be just a one-off seems almost impossible now. You're like, of course it was going to be multiple Hatchet movies.
I love how the first 3 movies, they pick right up where the last one was off. And speaking of Adam Green, like his cameos cracked me up, because in the first one he's all like, "Yeah, party, woo," Second one, he's like passed out in the background against the puking and like he partied too much. And then the third one, he's in jail.
Yeah.
From puking and too much on the street.
Well, and I think they talk about like this ludicrous backstory for this fictional character, Victor Crowley, and you get this kind of reaction shot from Adam Green, like, what ludicrous backstory?
That was great.
And he even made a comment about, I should have went on that tour.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's like, how do you expect anybody to buy that and believe that? And they cut right to him, and it's like...
Well, and when we were having the scene with Caroline Williams and Danielle Harris, I'm like, this is totally like on a break at a convention, you know, where it's just the girls hanging out, you know, trading war stories. And that must be so great to be kind of around your convention family on a set. Because usually, you know, you're only going to see these people at a show, but here you are actually acting together. And I think that's really fun too. Is that they've all known each other from years and years doing the convention circuits. Yeah. And so the idea that you actually get to do the thing that brought you to the convention in the first place is pretty great.
Well, one thing to me is that I think it's very evident and obvious that they're having a blast making these movies. You can tell that everybody involved is having the time of their life. I mean, that's how it feels to me. Like, it is fun, and the fun that and the passion that they must have had making it just bleeds off the screen. I mean, it really does. And I can understand why for a while these movies seem to have a pretty rabid fan base. I mean, unfortunately, it seems like it's died down some, but you know, I don't know. To me, it's like revisiting this and going back. It's like, I mean, I've always been a fan, and I really enjoyed coming back and revisiting them again. I thought it was a lot of fun.
To your point, I think this new steelbook that's been released, because it's got all these great extras, because it does show all the behind the scenes stuff. And I think, yes, there's that element of fun. And Adam Green has always said that the reason he likes doing these is that he gets to be together and work with his friends. But you also get a real perspective on how hard it is to make a movie. You know, there's never enough money, never enough time, and you just kind of have to push on through. And so to get the kind of high level effects that he gets is really a testament to his abilities as a filmmaker and to assemble that cast and crew.
Very much so. Yeah.
Let's jump ahead to the filmed in secret Victor Crowley, because I don't think anybody was expecting them to announce this. No, but they basically shot this all in secret years after anybody was thinking there would be another Hatchet movie, because Hatchet 3 did not do very well. It didn't get the theatrical release. Yeah. And then suddenly Victor Crowley pops up. And once again, we expand the universe where we have Perry Shen's character from 3. He has written a tell-all book of his survival in the swamps, and he's on a book tour. And, you know, he's traveling, and his plane goes down, wouldn't you know it, in the swamps where Victor Crowley is still raining terror upon people.
Yes, thanks to some independent filmmakers wanting to make an accurate film. They did research and found what the actual voodoo curse was. They were trying to figure out how to properly pronounce it. So they had YouTube videos of all of these people, including Tony Todd, saying it correctly. And it was Tony Todd's that finally brought him back too.
Yeah, well, because he was the one that actually said
that.
It
Actually, he's like, that is the correct pronunciation for the curse. And then the phone dies, and then bubbling.
Yeah. But once again, we have horror cameos galore. We have Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp. She's on board. Tiffany Shepis plays one of the film crew. And we get, Kane back. Danielle Harris even has a little cameo toward the end of the movie.
Yeah. Well, Felissa Rose is fantastic. She, to me, really steals the show in the movie. She's so good in that. And I actually had a chance to tell her that at a Wasteland, like the last one she was at, which was within the last year or so. And she was like just hanging out in the bar, as you know how everybody does afterwards. Yep. And I just went up to her and just was like, I just got to tell you how much fun it was to see you in Victor Crowley. Because that was one of those where it played in like a little small theater. Jen and I actually drove like, an hour and a half, almost 2 hours to go
An
see it
hour-
because we were like,
hour
we
and
got to go
45
see it.
minutes or something,
And so we
yeah.
went, and thankfully this time it was actually a decent amount of people in the audience, and we just had a blast. It was so much fun, but it was great to see how good she was. She really, really, to me, knocked it out of the park and played that part so perfectly. Because I mean, you know, there's a lot of skewering of Hollywood and things in that movie too. There's a lot of fun being poked at stuff and that. And I just thought all that stuff was great. I mean, you know, the sequence when he's signing the books and the girl comes up and wants to have him sign her, and then you got the guy that comes up and wants to have him sign him, which to me that was like,
homophobe.
oh man, we were just crying in the seats when that happened in the theater. It was so funny.
Well, fun story is that that guy who wants him to sign his junk, that's my buddy Whit Spurgeon, who was a Chicago actor for many years. And
Really?
he moved out to LA, and he was so excited to tell me that he was in the new Victor Crowley movie. And I didn't know what part he was playing. And so when I saw Whit show up, I was like, oh, you're that guy. That's pretty memorable.
How can you forget that?
And now you've seen a lot more of your friend than.
That's right. That's right. Well, Chicago actors, I mean, everybody's always taking their clothes off anyway. But
Well, hey, you know, you got to go for the gusto.
And the way that Adam Green tells the story is that they were planning to do, for the premiere, they announced it as a 10-year anniversary screening of the original Hatchet.
Oh.
And so when everybody came in, they jammed the theater. Everybody was all excited. All the cast members from all the previous Hatchet films were there. And then they announced it's not Hatchet, it's a new Hatchet movie. And people just lost their minds. So they got to see it completely fresh. And it was absolutely the right audience for it.
That must have been amazing. That must have been amazing.
And that was to think about the fact that it's been 10 years of Hatchet, you know, at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, what did you think? I mean, because this was your first time seeing it.
I enjoyed it. It is one of those things where you think this franchise has got to be running out of gas. It was at a time where Adam Green was feeling pretty low, and like what would be the best medicine for him is to get the gang back together. And so he called his longtime cinematographer and his longtime producer, and they all got together and they said, you know what, let's do a new Hatchet movie. And they shot it in secret, didn't tell anybody, and then announced it. And again, I think the reception wasn't what they expected it to be, but the creative experience was what they were hoping for. And as you pointed out, there are absolutely some rabid Hatchet fans out there. Victor Crowley has become an icon within the horror fandom. And this steelbook release has a 5th disc that was just produced in 2023, which basically the two major features are there's an hour-long conversation with him, his producer, and his cinematographer. And they're basically just sitting around talking about the memories and what this journey has been like.
Oh, that's cool.
That's got to be great.
And I think it's a really it's almost worth the upgrade just for that, is that you get to have that conversation. And then the other featurette is production diaries, where you have, because they, during the first Hatchet, they were doing an online journal to A, record the experience, but B, allow the fans to kind of get an idea of what was going on behind the scenes. Mm. And they bring back all of these actors, including Kane and makeup effects artists and things like that. And they're basically reading their journal entries while you see clips and stills from the film. And so it's an hour-long thing of the production journals. And so you get basically another 2 hours of extras on top of anything you already had.
That's awesome. Because I would imagine that probably the main discs are probably the same ones that are out there.
I don't think there's any new extras there. The bonus disc is what's the new stuff from 2023. One complaint I have about the steelbook, and I don't have that many steelbooks, but the way they've got it laid out, where the discs sit on top of each other on the spindle, and trying to get them out is a nightmare. So I hope that DarkSky reconsiders their packaging for future releases, because I know they're talking about doing big deluxe versions of other releases that they have in their catalog. And I just like the spindle thing is not a good idea. Like spread it out, make it individual spindles instead of just like they're all on like a column, and it's like you're trying to get them out, and it's I feel like I'm going to break the disc every single time I think of to take one out. So
I have done that in the past. I have broke a disc before.
Yeah, right. I'm like, why would you?
Why would you? Like, no.
I fear for the discs every time I have to put them in and out, and I will probably be like, okay, Steelbook, you can live on the shelf. I'm going to actually put I'm going to put the discs in like sleeves and put them over here in my card catalog.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, final thoughts on the Hatchet series, and thank you both so much for coming on.
My final thought is, I mean, watch them. Oh my gosh. The cameos alone and all the gore and the special effects and how they just go from one to another, like especially binge watching them like we did the past couple days to refresh our memory. It's perfect. It's just like one super long movie. I love it.
Well, and each film is only like 84 minutes. I don't think it gets past 84 minutes. So even that is like
that's a bonus
perfectly. And I mean, we can't talk about the Hatchet movies without also including what clearly had an influence is Terrifier. I mean, they kind of followed a similar type of path that Adam Green did with Hatchet, where they built up their fan base through the, conventions and just plain old grassroots doing everything themselves type thing. And they've turned it into this monster. They've created this icon with art, which to me is definitely in the wake of Victor Crowley. And I mean, I enjoy both franchises. I think that if I had to pick one, I would go with Hatchet, because overall it's just everything about the movies is a little bit superior, except maybe the gore. I mean, you have to give gore to Terrifier, but the characters are so iconic. I mean, not even to disrespect Terrifier, because I do appreciate and respect it, but I know people argue that some of the movies might be a little bit too long and this and that, which is something that none of the Hatchet movies do. I mean, you can knock all those out very quickly because they don't overstay their welcome. They really just come in, they do what they got to do, and then they get going,
They give you what you want, and then they're done.
I'm so glad you mentioned Terrifier, because really it is following a similar template. And that hadn't even occurred to me, but you're absolutely right. It's right there in front of you.
To me, I'd give Terrifier that, it's a meat and potatoes, hamburger, and fries type of thing, where it delivers the goods of what you're looking for, if that's your thing. I mean, I know it's not for everybody, but I mean, for myself, I was never a big fan of clown killers in the first place, but the way art is done works for me in a way that no others really have. I think it's the mime aspect of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress, getting off the topic, but that's you can't. There's no way that Terrifier couldn't have had taken influence from what Green did with Hatchet, and on seeing the success of that clearly had to inspire them, and they took that and ran with it. I mean, it's incredible, and I think it's great to see the success that they're having, and it's well deserved, because they have literally done it on their own. They could have given it to studios, and they didn't. They have stuck to their guns, held on to the franchise, and that's amazing, especially in the face of what kind of pressure has probably been given them. Now that this new one is a runaway, but they're definitely good bedfellows, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And not to digress further, but have you met Damien Leone at conventions?
Oh yeah.
And what is he similar to Adam Green in terms of the vibe?
Well, both him and Art, I forget the actor's name that plays Art. I mean, they're the same way. They're total, like, just cool guys. You can tell they're fans. They're super passionate. I mean, they're into it. They're not the exact same people as like Adam Green is. I mean, I only got to meet Adam, I think it was once or twice, tops, maybe. But I mean, they're definitely cut from a similar cloth, no doubt about it. What Adam Green started kind of opened the doors for, they were able to kind of take to the next level. And obviously they've had even more success. I mean, our son was like, man, Art the Clown is everywhere. I mean, you can't go to a Spirit Halloween, or you can't do everything. It's like he's everywhere. And to me, Victor Crowley should be on that same level too.
The thing is, it's harder to cosplay Victor Crowley.
Oh, for sure. No doubt.
And I think the simplicity of Art the Clown is part of the appeal, because It's easier to cosplay. And Victor Crowley, and that's the thing. I give a lot of credit to John Carl Buechler and Adam Green for coming up with this design that is kind of half Elephant Man.
Yeah.
And that it's truly unique, but it isn't the instantly iconic hockey mask or Michael Myers mask or Freddy with a glove. Like I think they deliberately went a different direction, which I appreciated, but I think it's easier to suddenly just identify that's Art the Clown.
Absolutely. I mean, another thing you could kind of throw in there with Victor is he's kind of got that backwoods cretin feel to himself too.
Yeah.
On the like Wrong Turn, or Hills Have Eyes, but as an unstoppable, killer that literally rips people apart.
He's misunderstood. He just wants his daddy.
He just wants his dad.
But there's that but you're right. The hardest thing about it is, unfortunately, that the more iconic thing is the hatchet when you see that, or the two hatchets. That's like what everybody recognizes, but that's not as like how Art is. I mean, he is an incredible icon. I mean, they're both such different killers, but so cool in their uniqueness of how they do things.
Yep.
I mean, Victor Crowley just literally will rip you limb from limb if he doesn't have anything else, or find some creative way to rend and maim you. And Art, you never know what he's going to pull out of that dad blasted garbage can. I mean, that's one of the things that I thought was so cool, is that there's all these different ways that he would find to take care of it. I mean, which it wasn't typical. We're like, your average iconic slasher had a signature weapon or a signature thing that they would do this or that. And I mean, these two characters don't do that. They totally, Victor does have his hatchet, but
But he uses it selectively.
Oh yeah.
He's just as happy to bring out the belt sander.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Cool.
You gotta love the belt sander.
I do love the belt sander.
You gotta love it.
Well, thank you both so much. Again, this is Scare-A-Thon 2024, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. And if you go to the link below in the description of this video, that will take you right to the platform, and you can make a donation right now. We're in the back half of the month, so now's the time. Let your voice be heard. And thank you both to Jen and Ryan for chiming in for Box Set Thursdays.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.